This video presents a simple visualization technique of interactive search sessions that is aimed at enabling a quick overview of differences between users and tasks. The technique is meant to complement quantitative similarity methods. More importantly, this visualization can be used in identifying patterns of search moves and actions in order to find higher-level search strategies that may be otherwise not visible. In the current example, each major change of direction indicates a change in the user's search strategy. Let's start by briefly reviewing common search task phases. A user first enters a query. Then she examines the search result list. After finding in the results a link to a document that is likely to be relevant for the user's information need, the user opens the document to read it. If the document is relevant, the user may want to keep it by saving or bookmarking it. Thus, in the somewhat simplified view of search tasks, 4 task phases are identified: query formulation, examining lists of search results, viewing and reading an individual content document, and bookmarking a relevant document. We mark these search task phases with the letters Q, L, C, and B. We choose to represent them on a two-dimensional plane as vectors. Each vector's direction and color represents uniquely a different task phase. Let's look at some examples. This pattern shows multiple query formulations with new search results lists. This pattern is composed of a series of red upward arrows, each followed by a blue horizontal arrow. Using our visual representation, we can see that a series of queries was entered, and for each a result list was examined. The brownish down-pointing arrows appearing towards the end of the sequence represent reading individual documents. The overall shape of this kind of pattern has an upward slope. We will later use it to quickly identify this type of user behavior. The second type of common behavior represents a user who prefers to browse documents rather than enter new queries. Here we see a downward slope. In this pattern, we can see that user entered only one initial query and then examined the search results list, opening a series of content documents. This behavior is a kind of hub and spoke movement where user comes back to the same result list and opens the next promising document. The typical downward slope of this pattern can be later used to quickly identify this type of user behavior. The next pattern shows a combination of previously described upward and downward movements. Here's a variation on upward and downward slope pattern. In the upward slope, included our visitation to individual documents, whereas in the downward slope part, we can see bookmarking activity. Patterns shown so far represented user behavior where user was entering queries and examining search results, the upward slope, or was examining search results and reading documents, the downward slope. In the currently shown pattern, the difference is that it represents a series of subsequences of all 4 states. That is, user formulates a query, examines search results, opens and reads a document, and saves the document by bookmarking it. Each such subsequence is visually represented as a small loop. Another typical user behavior is represented by the pattern of a vertical shape. In this case, a user entered an initial query, examined one search results page, and then started browsing documents by following links from one document to another. eventually deciding to bookmark one of the documents. Most of the search session involves browsing. As with previous examples, knowing this particular pattern will later help us in identifying the document browsing behavior in search sessions. Numbers that are well visible in this example are part of the visual representation. They uniquely identify pages or documents. They can be used in identifying returning behavior to the same search result lists and document revisitations. Here is another example of a pattern that can be encountered when representing visually search sessions. The pattern has overall horizontal shape, and the main reason for describing it here is the middle part that contains a series of blue arrows. They represent moving from one search results page to the subsequent one, a behavior that is not very common, yet still can be observed. After presenting a few common and fundamental patterns, we show one example of a more composite pattern. We can identify here a couple of multiple query formulations with search result list viewing that is interspersed with document browsing. We can expect that on more difficult tasks, patterns of user behavior will be composed of the few fundamental types. Thus, knowing the fundamental patterns will help us to describe more complex search sessions. The presented visualization technique of search sequences can be useful in comparing different users performing different search tasks. What is shown here is a set of sequences from one user study. Now, focusing on examples from the same search tasks and the same user interface, here is a variety of different strategies that users employed working towards the same goal. The presented here visualization technique allows for a very quick overview of a variety of different approaches users are taking to achieve the same information goal. Looking now at two users who perform the same search tasks using the same search interface, one can clearly see that these two users performed the task quite differently. They used quite different strategies. On the left-hand side, the user performed very few queries and focused on returning to search results and examining from their content pages. On the right side, that user issued many more queries, examined many more search results, and only few individual documents. In summary, this video presented a novel visualization technique of search sequences. The technique allows for a quick overview of strategies employed by users in performance of search tasks. It allows for a quick identification of differences between users and their performance on different tasks, as well as for possible identification for issues, such as the users may be expending too much effort at some points in search process. More importantly, this technique can be used in identifying patterns of search moves that indicate higher-level search strategies that otherwise may be not visible.